So James is struggling with bad teachers, which is a common experience for a lot of people during VCE. I have a teacher for methods whose second language is English, really struggling to understand him. On top of that, he will only go over examples from the textbook without really explaining what he's actually doing. Anyone going through it the same? And any thoughts of what to do? So this question has two parts to it. So we have the second language is English, and then we also have examples purely from the textbook. So there's obviously multiple things that James is dealing with, and I have empathy for James, because that is a hard position to be in, because I feel as if you're in that position, then you feel as if you're out of control, because you didn't decide who your teacher was. And this teacher, I wouldn't necessarily blame the teacher for the first part of this, which, if his second language is English, then you can't really do much about his English proficiency. You can only take what's in front of you. So it's definitely not him to blame. It's not him to blame for that one. But I do empathize with James, because I'm sure you feel as if you've kind of been let down by the school, and there's probably other people or other teachers in the school who who are more up to scratch with their ways of teaching, instead of just going over the English textbook. But this does happen, and it's not limited to just VCE. It happens in so many other things in life. So it's actually a good lesson to learn now, when you have other ways to work around it, because I'm just going to spoil the video for you. There definitely are many ways to work around this, and if anything, it's a blessing, because you're not going to rely on your teacher who is capped, who has a certain capacity. Whereas if you go out there and you get the resources yourself and get the help yourself, then you're not limited to what your teacher knows. You're limited to what information that you can find. So, this online forum that you've joined here at the VCE Methods School, that's the first step. That's just one piece of the puzzle to helping you succeed in VCE methods without solely relying on your teacher. And even though I said I can't empathize with the second language English part of this problem, my teacher during VCE 3-4 methods was not good at all. And I've realized that early on. And just the fact that you've realized that early on, you can take preventative measures to working around it. And also the fact that you're aware of it means that you're going to actively kind of look for those resources early yourself. And I'm sure there's many people in your class who haven't actually realized that their teacher is not up to scratch. So you're in a really good place right now, because it's March the 7th today, and you posted this 8 days ago. So you've realized this before March even started. You realized this within a month of school starting. So you're in a perfect position to kind of start your self-learning process and perfect VCE without your teacher's help. And that's what you need to do to succeed anyway, because if you just rely on what the teacher's saying, they aim what they say to the average student, which is perfectly understandable, because they need to target the average, because if they go too hard, then the people who are kind of like expecting to get a lower score, they're going to be left behind. But if they make what they're teaching too basic and boiled down, then the people who are kind of aiming for higher scores, they're going to be left behind. So it's kind of double-edged sword. So they just aim for the middle and kind of go at an expected pace and go through the textbook at a pace that the average student would go through, and that's it. But what you should do is you have to kind of go at a pace that aligns with your goal or higher. So let's say, I'm just making up numbers at this point, but let's say if you're going for 40 plus, from my experience, you have to be at least slightly ahead of what your school is doing. So the rule of thumb that I say is 2 to 3 weeks is perfect. It's the optimal time to be ahead of your classwork. So if you have a classwork schedule, so let's say if you have a year breakdown where week by week, this is what the topics we're going to be doing, that's perfect, because what you can do is predict what the school is going through and just do it earlier ahead of time. Like, it works out perfectly. And that's what I did personally. So the only thing I could tell you is, the only advice I could give is based on my experiences. There's no right or wrong answers when it comes to this thing. But what I would say is that just based on my experience of going through high school, and also based on the experience of people that I've taught for the last 6 years, the people who about 2 to 3 weeks ahead, they're the ones that are aiming for 40 plus or higher. And not to say that you can't get 40 plus if you stick to the schedule, but it's just less likely. And there's multiple reasons why. The first one is because when you're leading up to SACs and exams, you don't have time to do SAC and exam specific preparation. And you've already probably felt this with subjects as well. But if you just go through the textbook and learn the theory, that's nowhere near enough to perfect the knowledge that you need to do well on SACs and exams. Because sitting SACs and exams is almost like a specific skill in itself. And they're very difficult. And especially for VCE methods, it's just in the title as well. VCE mathematical methods, that's the full name of the subject. And it's not necessarily about the knowledge and the theory, it's about the method behind it. So the method comes through application problems, which are always harder. And those are rarely in the textbook. You have to go through, online resources like we have here, or you go through past exams, or you go through past SACs that your school gives you. They're the places that you need to be refining in that 2 to 3 week buffer that you've built. Because if you just follow the schedule that your class has built, then you're literally finishing content, and then 2 to 3 days later, you have a SAC or you have a test or something along those lines. So that's why I recommend this 2 to 3 week buffer. Any longer than that, then it's just a bit excessive, and it'll probably take more time to do. And there's something called the curve of forgetting, which I refer to as well. But the curve of forgetting suggests that when you increase the frequency at which you study something, then you're going to retain more information in the long run. So how it kind of works is if you just learn something for the first time, so this is going to be a graph, right? Let's just set up our scale here. I'm just trying to get this graph right. Okay, so the first time you learn something, you're going to retain most of it in that instant moment because you're just listening to it for the first time. But you probably know when you listen to something for the first time, most of it goes out the window. And that exact number, I think, is 60% you retain. So you lose 40% almost straight away after hearing something. So what you do is you want to listen to whatever you're doing again. So let's say this is when you learnt it for the first time, and that could just be through going through the textbook yourself and trying some exercises and reading the information in the textbook. That'll be the first place that you kind of get this stimulus from. And then you watch a video on our online course. So that'll spark it again. But the key thing is that the amount that you forget decreases. So you see that we have like this increase in knowledge that you retained. And then let's say the next step is to do one of our worksheets. Okay, so you're going to do one of our worksheets, and then that knowledge is going to be increased again. And then you listen in class. And as you said, your teacher is not the best, but that's okay. Even if you listen in class, having learned things before, you are going to realize that you're going to understand a lot more than you originally do, because you're going to be in a position where you can kind of predict what the teacher is saying. And if you get to that point where you can predict what the teacher is going to say, then you've really perfected the knowledge and you'll be at the top of this curve. So let's say you pay attention in class, and that'll be the 4th level of stimulus, and then your knowledge is pretty much at 100% of what it needs to be. And I'm not saying you're going to get 100% in your test. I'm just saying that what you need to understand as a fundamental foundation, that's going to be at near perfect. So you can see that as you increase the stimulus, then the amount that you forget decreases, which therefore means that the amount that you remember increases. So it's all about that frequency at which you study. It's not about necessarily time. It's about the frequency at which you study. And it could just be small bursts. Read through the textbook for 20 minutes and try and understand what's going on. 100%, you're not going to understand everything, because no one understands things when they read the textbook. It's perfectly fine. And then you watch one of our videos, and then you kind of put the pieces together. Oh yeah, I watched one of Adrian's videos and he walked through how to do this. I still don't quite get it. I kind of need a bit more of an application to see how this is applied. And then you try our worksheet, and then you see how it's applied to a specific type of problem. That might be a bit of a harder problem. And you can see, again, you're putting more pieces together. And then you listen in class and you're saying, oh, now everything makes sense because the teacher's explained in this way and they've applied it to this example. And I could have done this example if I did it myself, but I just heard the teacher do it and I predicted what he was going to do and I predicted right. So when you get to that point where you can kind of predict what the teacher's going to say, that's the golden zone that you need to be in. So that's just the curve of forgetting for you. increase the amount of stimulus that you have. So just find these resources online. So if you want some tips about where to find resources, obviously I would subjectively say that our resources are kind of self-contained. So you can go through everything that you need to. You can learn all the theory and you can try all the applications through our worksheets. Obviously, it's not limited to what we have. There's heaps of resources out there. You have Khan Academy where they have really good videos that you can watch. You can go and find, practice. You can go through the VCA website and go through past exams and see questions that are there and try them. It's a bit of a tedious task, but you can kind of like sift through and see which ones apply to your specific topics. We give out resources all the time that are for specific areas. So we're going to be releasing a kind of an equivalent of the VCE checkpoints later in the year, and that'll be kind of grouped up. There'll be application and SAC and exam style questions grouped up for each of the topics. So that's something to look forward to as well. But obviously there are the VCE checkpoints already available that you can get, which I would recommend, I guess, because it is convenient. Even though those questions are all publicly available, it's just convenient to know that you can go through each of the topics and it's all kind of organized like that. So let's go back to your question. I have a teacher for methods whose second language is English and really start struggling to understand him. So I feel as if you learned most of it beforehand and then you kind of went to his class, and you might not understand everything, you can kind of pick and choose the things that you need to know from his class. But the goal should be to understand as much as you can before the class, and then the classes are just about sifting the information that you can understand from him. So yeah, as I said, you don't have to necessarily rely on him, and you shouldn't rely on him. You should be relying on your own your own self-desire to learn and your own self-desire to succeed, and trying to get it ahead of the class. Again, 2 to 3 weeks ahead is optimal. He will only go over examples from the textbook without really explaining what he's actually doing. So if you understand the process before you go into class, then you'll understand what he's doing, because you'll be able to see, this is the process for this type of problem, and you'll see it being reflected by him. So you're not necessarily relying on him to teach you the process. You can teach the process yourself through our resources here and through our through other resources online, and then you're just watching him to see as an example how it's done. And you don't necessarily have to understand from what he's saying every step, but you can understand from your own knowledge as well. So hopefully that helps, James, with your problem. If you just want to, I'll just show you exactly where to get these types of resources. So if you go to Classroom and then you go to Functions and Relations, we have our theory video here that just teaches you all the theory that you need to know. And then you have the applications, where it's an application problem for this specific topic, and it's more so meant to be a SAC or exam type question, or just a more applied type of problem for that theory. And then Try It Yourself is just a worksheet that has a wide range of questions. So it starts off easy and then it goes to harder application problems. So this is just a PDF with different questions that you can attempt in your own time, and you can pick and choose which one you want, which ones you want to do. Now, if you want to see, I assume you know where the VCE exams are, but if you go VCE Methods VCA exams, so you go to this page here, and then you'll see that we have the 2023 one, which is for the new study design. So they only have one practice exam or one past exam relevant to our study design. But what I would say is that 2016 to 2022 is very, very similar. There's a couple of things that are added into the new study design, and there's a couple of things that are taken out. But I would say 90% or 90+% is exactly the same. So these are pretty reflective of what you should know. And if you ever come across anything that you don't know and you have no idea how to do it, then a likely reason is because it's part of the old study design. And I would even say for the archive version, these are very similar as well. It's kind of funny, like they changed the study design, but they just take out small little bits because maths doesn't really change, right? They're just changing what they want to assess. So I would even say for the archive versions, there's definitely good questions that you could take out of here. Let's just go to 2006 exam 1. And we'll see. Okay, this is extremely relevant. Composite functions. This one here, inverse function. Exactly. It's exactly what we need to do. This one is, chain rule. You haven't looked at the chain rule yet, but this one would be relevant as well. This one is relevant. This one is relevant. This one is relevant to the study design. This one is relevant to the study. I'm just doing this as an example to show you how many. This is not relevant to the study design. This is relevant to the study design. This is relevant to the study design. This is relevant to the study design. this is, yeah, that was relevant to the study design. So out of 11 questions, 10 of them were relevant to the study design. So you can see how even from nearly 20 years ago now, these exams are very relevant to what you need to know. So there's definitely not a lack of questions and not a lack of application type problems. It's just a matter of having the, striving to get ahead of things and striving to learn things yourself. So yeah, again, hopefully that helps with your journey. Last thing I want to say is that don't hate your teacher because of this. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to dread going to class, and I don't want you to just go ahead of classwork and resent your teacher because you're not learning everything from him. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to really hate and dread going to class, and you don't want to do that. You want to be in an environment, and this doesn't apply just for VCE subjects, this is in general, but you want to be in an environment that feels loving. It's kind of a weird way to word it, but you want to be in an environment that you actually like going to. So even if your teacher doesn't explain everything, just maybe think about appreciating the fact that he's going through an example, and if you know how to do it beforehand, then you can just appreciate him working through that example. And even though he might not have the best explanation, your knowledge from beforehand should kind of explain what he's what he's going through and why he's doing those things. So yeah, I just want to leave it on that, James. But best of luck with your journey. If you have any other questions, feel free to comment on this video.